Okay, warm greetings all. My AKA is Ironclad Partiality. And we are here on Reality with Partiality. Our guest today is Mr. Bryton Codd. And he will be informing his journey, past, present, and future, vision-wise, in becoming the very best version of himself. Good morning, co-host. Ivan.
Good morning.
Bryton, welcome.
Morning. Thanks for having me, Percy. Thanks for having me, Ivan.
Yes. Quickly, you want to say hello to anybody before you launch into your presentation?
I guess just a shout out to my family back home and to all Belizeans.
Yes.
Home and abroad. It's good to be able to chop it up this morning with you all.
Yeah, man. Chop it up. I love it. Okay. Yeah. And co-host, some adults are to be blamed for the reason some of our adolescents, young people, are conflicted. Conflicted in a way whereby at times they're not on full throttle. How can they always be on full throttle when we are sending them mixed messages? Now, Bryton, like our guest before him, will be making his presentation without interruption, our interruption, and the interruption of our audience. While presenting, he wants a microphone. In which regard, I am Percy. You are Bryton. To always see with clarity, one must neither look up to anyone, nor look down on anyone, rather see people the way they are, their truth and reality. If you look up, you overcompensate. And if you look down, you will be drawing conclusions about the person, and wrongly so, because as long as a person lives, has life, the 70, which is the average lifespan here in Belize, there's always the awesome possibility that that person be transformed into the very best version of him or herself. So, our friend and guest, Bryton, always bring your A game without making any excuses. Athletes talk about getting in a zone. The way I am able to stay inspired is by consciously being governed by my spirit as opposed to my body and mind. Tell the world about your journey, from whence you came to where you are, culminating with where you envision going, particularly if you have found your niche. You're completely free to be yourself. When you are through making your presentation, we will discuss together with our audience who are listening, including answering the questions and their comments in the chat feed. Therefore, Bryton, welcome to Reality with Partiality. Go ahead and make your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Percy. Thank you, Ivan. First, I think this is a good way to segue into sort of uncovering who Bryton is. Because, like you said, it's about seeing people at the same level. It's about recognizing our contributions, despite where we come from and where background stems from. And that's essentially where I want to start, because my ontology is essentially from people who have not had the opportunity to walk the spaces that I've walked, to enter the rooms that I've entered, and to hear conversations that I've heard, particularly those conversations that happens behind closed doors. Um, so I'm going to start there by saying that who I am, what I've grown to become, and who I continue to aspire to be has been shaped since childhood. And I go back to my days when I was raised by my grandparents in Eden Alley. And if anyone knows where that is located in Belize, it's right next to Majestic Alley. In fact, they're connected. Um, and that's where my stomping ground was as a child. I grew up in a space where I was exposed to the harshest realities of Belizean life, where I got to see firsthand the things that an education system today would not be able to explain through the theories and practically. I got to experience the reality of what poverty looked like and looks like within the Belizean community. I got to experience what lack of access to education looks like, lack of access to healthcare and health implications that comes as a result of such. I got to see what drug drugs circulating within our community looks like, how gangs operate. I got to see crime. I heard from a young child the plans to commit certain actions that were against laws and understand what were some of the justifications or the reasoning behind those actions by persons who would commit those offenses. Um, and it made me from a very young age aware of the social realities and the harsh realities of Belizeans and what Belizeans go through on a day-to-day basis, particularly those that have been locked off from opportunities to self-actualize and to expand and essentially shape and have an ontology that would propel them to their best selves. So since we're talking about me essentially moving towards my best self, I would be remiss if I didn't start there, because my childhood best friend and family still live in this particular area. And I'm so appreciative of just the support and the love that I get from this community, because with the little that they had growing up, and I remember this as a child, with the little that they had, they still shared bread with me. I would be over there sometimes from 6 a.m. in the morning until 6 in the evening when my mom would drop me off at my grandparents and when they would pick me up from their time off from work. And during the day, I would see and hear a whole lot of different things. Essentially, that's just the Belizean reality. I would hear my friend being sent out to go and buy one one hot dog sausage out of the pack to make breakfast. And that would be split between a family of almost 5 or 6. And essentially, they would try to stretch that breakfast by making fried jacks and really find a way how to stretch that flour to make it um, essentially being able to provide for everyone within the household. And even when I was there with that limited resource that they had and limited access to food, they would still find it within their heart to share and break bread with me. And so I'm very appreciative. That essentially laid the foundation for who Bryton Codd is, because without that experience, my ontology would have been very different. Growing up in a stable household with 2 parents who were working and had decent jobs to be able to provide for me, that really shaped my thinking from a very early age. And I'm talking ages 3, because I attended Ethel Vargas School, which was through the Majestic Alley area as a young child, and then later moved on to Miss Ebanks Preschool. But those realities of seeing all the different complexities of Belizean life at an early age essentially created within me a passion to want to do better. They often say when you know better and you've seen better, you have to do better. That's essentially where all of that started for me. Um, Historically speaking, we know the culture of Belizean society and how colonialism has really um, dampened and created ramifications for Belizean life after independence, after 1981. And we've recognized that even post-independence, that the lives and livelihoods of people have not been significantly different from that which it was before 1981. In fact, I often say that the dignity of people within our communities have not been fully realized, despite us becoming a sovereign nation and becoming independent. I say that because the realities that we see existing today within Belize is very much still present 40 plus years after independence. You go back to some of these communities and the same families are still there living in under the same conditions that they have been living in prior to independence. And despite the change in political leadership, we have continued to see the political encroachment of impoverished communities for politicians to remain in power. But before I go into that, I just want to go back to me and where I came from. Um, so I transitioned to Miss Ebanks Preschool at ages 5, and then started Grace Primary School. Um, it was the school that my father had attended as a child as well. And that's where I got into the arts, got exposed to a bit of the sports, because that was one of the things that was central to the culture of Grace Primary. You'd either be playing some instrument or you'd be in some sport.
Mm.
Because if you know who Miss Edwards was at the time, she was someone who really set the standard with what holistic education looks like. And I think it's something that should be replicated in all elementary institutions across the country, because it allows young people to be able to shift their thinking in not just looking at academics as a sole outlet, but really looking at harnessing young people's energy into something positive. Um, so that was my experience at Grace Primary. I played steel pan for about 3 or 4 years. I played bass recorder. I was also involved in volleyball, and who knew that that would have been my first exposure to volleyball, which would have shaped a significant portion of my life and still continues to. But then I transitioned to Edward P. Hart High School. And I will say at Grace Primary, I was not the smartest in the bag. Um, but when I transitioned to Edward P. Hart High School, it really unlocked something for me. I encountered mentors, teachers who really and truly cared about my development. And even though I was a bad egg as a young kid, I went on a suspension in first form in Edward P. Hart High School. It really solidified in me something that was important, which was I'm either going to get another suspension and get kicked out of EPR, or I'm going to really buckle down and focus on what I'm here to do. And I didn't want to be the child within my family that would disappoint my parents after working hard to send us to school and to get us into these spaces. So I buckled down, became a peer helper in second form, and I really tried to contribute to young people's development and to explain to them that, you know what, we have choices that we have to make in life, and we have to be able to walk a path that's going to be reflective of the positive things that we want to contribute to society. So from a young age, I've always been involved in giving back to community. I've always been involved in young people and youth development. And in Edward P. York, I really met people who were disciplinarians. Mr. Cardenas, Mr. King, Miss Flowers, who recently passed away, may she rest in peace. These people were disciplinarians, and they essentially helped to mold and shape me into the person I am today. Fast forward, I went to SJC. JC wasn't my best experience. It was completely different from Edward P. York. I didn't feel like I had lecturers and mentors who really cared. essentially, that's something that I hear all too often with the junior college. People have different experiences, but my experience was not the best one. But despite that, I was very much involved in different areas, whether it was sports, I was involved in debates, and all these other extracurricular activities that would really and truly help to move me towards that path of self-actualization. And I started to dive more into the sports. I had graduated Edward PR because I had started in third form to play basketball in the U17 and the U19 with Matthew Smiling. And thereafter, I transitioned to volleyball when that program died down, and I met Mr. Alan Sharp one Christmas, and I started playing volleyball with the Jaguars Club. And that essentially was the beginning of my volleyball journey back in 2012. 2000 and Christmas of 2012. Um, the amount of things that I've seen and been exposed to as a result of diving into the sports. Um, I'll start off by saying my first exposure to international volleyball really changed my approach about what sports can do for country and what sports can do for young people and our development. That exposure from just traveling that one time to Panama, which was the first place I traveled to with the under 19 team, really opened my eyes to the possibilities of what Belizeans could experience, particularly considering the depth of national talent that we have if they're exposed to these spaces and these opportunities. I played for approximately 15 years with the national team, as well as clubs. I transitioned to being a professional volleyball player, actually Belize's first professional volleyball player in 2021. And I was playing in Finland in the European Cup. And I came back home as a result of the war that had started with Russia and Ukraine. Um, Essentially, I share these things because you never know where you're going to land or where you're going to end up at the start of your journey. When I started playing volleyball, I just wanted to do something that was going to continue to utilize my athletic talents and abilities. I never thought that I would have become a national team player. I never thought that I would have become one of the best in the country at the time. And I was very disciplined. Again, that discipline that I learned from Edward PR High School came right back full into my practice within the athletic arena and training outside of the athletic arena. Um, I then transitioned from SJCJC to Galen University, where I pursued um, anthropology and minored environmental science. And during that time, I really was exposed to a lot of great Belizean thinkers, people like Dr. John Morris, people like Dr. Lida Laska, who's very incredible in terms of getting students up to par with academia and asking questions and asking tough questions. Um, that's the sister of Honorable Balaramos. Um, but she pushed us to think critically, and I think that's what's super important, and something that's really missing, I think, from a very young age within our education system. Having young people in a space where they can think critically, and be able to analyze situations and break it down and form an opinion that's based in facts and logic and reasoning. I think those things are things that we need to welcome back within the education space from a very young age to push young people to think above and beyond what they're predisposed to and what they think they're capable of. Um, but during my time at Galen University, I really started to see myself shape into um, this innate leader that I knew that I was. Um, and I ended up becoming the president of Galen University in my very last year, um, trying to advocate on behalf of students and essentially create a space for students to feel comfortable to come to university, to ask certain questions about school policies. And we initially started what would now be the National Student Union of Belize. That discussion started during my last tenure. I remember meeting with one of the representatives, the president from University of Belize at the time, and we sat down in Galen University's library and we discussed the importance of.
My colleague, I don't know what happened. I hope he's gonna come back on online, but he just dropped out for a little bit. But whenever, okay, he's back. Okay, he's back.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, just keep going.
Yeah, and essentially, one of the things that I said was that we need to, as young people, formulate our own space. If it's not going to be created for us, which we know it won't, formulate our own space to be able to contribute to national development, particularly considering the percentage of Belize's youth population. It's important that we're in those spaces. But outside of that, I was very much engaged in other activities. I started to look at developing spaces for young people. So the Young Leaders Alliance of Belize, which came out of the Youth Votes Matter in 2020, was one of the areas that we really used to propel the voices of young people, and not just propel, but also center ourselves around the discussion table. It would have been in 2022, I would believe, 2021, when the PCC discussions were happening, the People's Constitution Commission, and Ms. Dominique Morales and myself would have jumped on the bus to Belmopan to attend one of the House committee meetings to advocate on behalf of young people for our space around this discussion of the reformation of the PCC, of the Constitution. And essentially, we took a bus to Belmopan, we went to the House meeting, delivered our address, and essentially made our case that it's impossible to reform a constitution if you're inviting all parties to the table to exclude or divorce young people from that particular discussion. So essentially, we try to immerse ourselves in these spaces, these discussion spaces, as much as we possibly can. Apart and aside from that, I was also very much involved in sports and what sports could contribute to young people. And my brother and I were very avid persons in terms of like developing ideas as it relates to sports and how we could help young people from Belize really harness and tap into their talents, but also recognizing the importance of education. And so we developed a foundation called BK Sports. And essentially, this is a platform that provides an opportunity to network with coaches from the US, Canada, also from the UK. But also beyond that now, we're looking at as well as establishing these networks with persons who would be agents to represent our young people after they're finished from their university studies to be able to transition into professional volleyball, basketball, track and field, other sports as well. So I started this foundation with my brother, particularly because of my experiences that I had in terms of me recognizing that if I did not push for myself to be able to leverage education through my
Call your brother's name also. Call his name.
Berisford. So Berisford does a lot of the groundwork. He's a negotiator by training and by practice. And he does a lot of the groundwork in terms of establishing these relationships with coaches. But we do it because we recognize the importance of harnessing young people's abilities, helping them to self-actualize and to really expand their academic acumen as well, through these opportunities that exist. And really to date, we've done tremendous work, and we don't get paid to do these things. These are just things that we've done because of the way how we've been raised. And so central to what I shared earlier, my ontology was shaped by my exposure and my experiences that I had as a child growing up, really and truly seeing the harsh realities of poverty, impoverished communities, health implications, lack of access to education, um, criminality, gangs, drugs, you name it. I've seen those things growing up. And so when a lot of people who I speak to say, oh, wow, you've been exposed to these things. Well, that's the era that my mom grew up in. That's the era my grandparents lived in. My cousins grew up in those areas. And being exposed to those things from a very young age made me recognize that despite we see all these social issues within these spaces, there is a lot of things that we often overlook if we don't look deeper. And you really recognize community in those spaces. You recognize people who care. You recognize people who yearn for better. You recognize people for the dignity that they have. And you also recognize, and this is me thinking about myself as a future leader, you recognize people who have silence power. And I say that because a lot of people from these communities, because of not having the access to education, they are essentially trapped or held to a system that is not serving them, but not necessarily recognizing the silence power that they have to be able to change and move, um, how those systems really and truly work along with communities. Um, and so that's been shaped from a very young age, and it really applies to everything that I do. I then moved into my professional career. I got injured in 2022, 2023. And so I had to pull back from playing volleyball. Again, another important juncture, critical juncture in my lifetime, actually. Because had I not had my education, I don't know what I would have fall back on, because that's the vulnerability of being an athlete and playing sports. Um, you could suddenly become injured. You could suddenly um, not perform at your optimal, and so you have to have some type of backup to fall upon. And my backup was essentially in the environmental space, um, because that's where I really established. I had a passion for it, um, from a very young age, working with people in communities in safeguarding environment. It was very much centered in the spaces that I've been brought up in. I remember going fishing with my dad's through mangrove patches in Belama when Belama was not so developed as it is today. Um, those experiences, they really, um, for me, unraveled advocacy in terms of environmental conservation and biodiversity conservation, because I've spoken out several times as well against the cutting of mangroves around the Belama area. I've spoken out publicly about that on several news stations, because these spaces, they provide essential ecosystem service for our daily survival, and they provide ecosystem services for biodiversity around us. They promote balance within our community spaces. And so when we senselessly remove these spaces without doing any type of studies and understanding the rippling effects that it will have downstream, then we put ourselves in a position to really experience the shocks that comes from the climate crisis that we're dealing with, and just the vulnerability that we find ourselves in on a day-to-day basis in an ever so changing climate. Um, but to transition from that, I ended up becoming an AOSIS fellow in 2024, which essentially works with the permanent mission of Belize, but supporting the 39 member states that forms the Small Island Developing States community. Prior to that, I served actually as a biodiversity consultant and a policy analyst within the Ministry of Sustainable Development. Um, and that really solidified for me an understanding of the policies around environmental conservation, climate change, sustainable development, waste management, things of that nature. And it allowed me to transition into this fellowship smoothly, which would have been another critical juncture in my lifetime because I got exposed to very high level conversations and discussions as it relates to people, climate, debt sustainability, climate finance, ocean issues. Those were some of the areas that I particularly focus on. And coming from Belize, essentially, and understanding the nuances that exist within communities that were severely impoverished made me really understand the work that needs to be done at the international level, but also at the local level, to be able to meet people where they are and to be able to um, tackle this climate crisis with people at the forefront in terms of protecting the most vulnerable, who are being impacted by the climate crisis. And so the EOSIS fellowship really was another critical juncture in my lifetime, and it expanded me to new horizons, um, opened up a lot of networking opportunities to be able to um, just really and truly like expand and self-actualize a bit more in what is now becoming my niche focus. Um, Currently, I am in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm pursuing a doctoral degree in environmental science and society with a focus on small island developing states, climate finance, climate adaptation, and vulnerabilities. But the trajectory of where I'm going is really to unsilence and unravel um, history. And that includes Belize's political history and how that really shapes um, our diplomatic practice and approaches as small island developing states in a space where there is an asymmetry of power that exists as a small country, negotiating with all these other larger countries who are supposed to provide us with the financing to be able to really tackle this climate crisis. And so my research is particularly focused on historicizing Belize's um, political formation, really, looking at these critical moments in Belize's history to essentially analyze how we show up in these diplomatic spaces and how we leverage these these agency, leverage these repertoires to be able to utilize those within spaces where there is asymmetry of power to get the best possible outcomes as small island developing states. And so that's where I am currently. And the work that I do is essentially linked back to really and truly finding ways how to decolonize our thinking, to decolonize the systems and the structures, and to really claim back power, um, unravel the narratives that have historically been told and those which have been silenced, and to really use that as a space to open up the conversation around how we navigate as Belizeans within certain spaces, and how that essentially looks not just internationally, not just in academia, but realistically what that looks like for Belizeans. Because one of the things I often say is, for me, Bryton Codd, Eden Site was my first university. And Eden Sight taught me the reality. It exposed me to the reality. And the only things that I thought about were the theories of what could be in Eden Sight. In university, on the contrary, university exposes me to the theory and what exists theoretically, but it also makes me think about how these theories and these different frameworks that I'm engaging with will essentially be applied realistically and practically. And so it's like the flip of the coin. And I always say that my experience in Eden Sight University is essentially by far much more important and significant than the work that I'm doing right now. Because the work that I'm doing right now is being steered by what I've been predisposed to, what I've experienced as a child growing up, and what I've always been passionate about, which is helping people to self actualize, to move beyond the confines of a system that have held them back for many years. And essentially, that is who I am, and who I am becoming is really to contribute to national development in any way that I possibly can. But I've always had the thinking of entering into political leadership, and that doesn't necessarily escape my psychology, but at the same time, I do recognize that as someone who is a very logical, rational thinking person, that I am going to do so on my own terms, but also do so when I feel that I am ready to best serve my community. Because I hold a very high standard for myself in wanting to be able to provide the best of myself to community, and not essentially just rush into something just because the opportunity exists. It's about being able to provide your best self so that people could get the best of you, and you're able to analyze situations critically and to understand people, connect with people, and to really create the shift that's necessary to get people out of the situation that they find themselves in today. And I think I'm going to pause there for now, Mr. Percy. And that's essentially who I am in a nutshell. I am what people would call a jack of all trades, but I do believe I work on mastering those trades. Volleyball, I was a professional volleyball player. I've done diplomatic work. I've now been entering into the apex of academia here at Emory University. And all of those things, they come with their challenges, their setbacks, but it's about how you push forward, how you move forward. And for me, that inspiration is drawn from recognizing what history exists within my community, within my family, and wanting to really make a difference.
Yeah, I know that university, Eden Site. I didn't attend, but I know of it. Let's start there. Colleague, my headquarter, Voice of America headquarters was upstairs of Eden Theater, the old Eden Theater building. So the area is the Musa Turf, former two-term prime minister, our first back-to-back prime minister since independence.
Mm-hmm.
The Honorable Said Musa, through which they have this Majestic Alley, infamous for guns, and the hotman scene, one of the. Let's start there. So I know your parents, both of them. I know. So you call it raise, but we say nurturing. And yeah, you're both my friends. I don't know, maybe your mom and I had a couple classes together somewhere. Your dad and I used to drive down from Belapan, chopping it up. You got your hands on, you got your experience, life experience from the age 3 back there. You rush over that, man. You rush over that. You really, and then your parents made sure you attend Grace Primary, one of the finest preschools. You have to pay for that one, and my colleague, that co-host, that one not cheap. That private school. So it was deliberate of your parents to have you, you
Yeah,
know, at Grace Primary while you were overshadowing grandparents as they age, right?
yeah,
Hello. Mm-hmm. Talk to us
yeah,
a little. Give us a little more flesh around this one.
yeah.
Well,
So,
if I may just put in my
Put
little
in a
two
plug.
cents there.
Yes. Yes.
I am fully aware of the Eden Center because when I moved to Belize City and was working, my
Mm-hmm.
first child went to that same preschool in Majestic Alley.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
I,
you're cognizant.
but I was living and I was living in Ladyville at the time, and so between
Yes.
my wife was working at the eye clinic.
Okay.
Right? There's a what they call it, the people that do eye services free. Um, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Lions? I don't know. I don't
No.
know.
So I really appreciate where you came from, um, Brighton, because it's truly an area that you were able to rise above the influences that could have changed your path. So I'm very, very
Well, it
happy.
shaped him. I want to know more about how it shaped you.
okay, so maybe I should establish that I did not live in the area.
Okay. Yeah. Establish the thing,
I
man.
lived and I grew up in Belama. I'd say mostly on the weekends I was in Belama, but because my parents work from morning till night, I would be with my grandparents where they
Ah.
live. So I
Ah.
was essentially raised in the area. That would be where I spent most of my time
Yeah.
throughout the
Yeah.
day. Um, but I think it was also very purposeful. My parents never believed in leaving us to stay at daycare. My grandparents were very welcoming of us. Um, they love being grandparents, and so um,
And your parents very humble. In other words, right? They not look down. They not look down on the upbringing. They don't look down.
no, absolutely not. They've
Yeah. Yeah.
been
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
struggles. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard stories of my mom that she's shared with me that growing up sometimes she would go to school and she didn't have anything to eat. And my grandfather would be looking all over the place in the morning time. She doesn't know how he does it, but he would take a sandwich at school for her. And these things, they really shape my reality and my thinking, because that's just one generation ago. It's essentially their contributions to my development was one that wanted better for their children, but also
Mhm.
recognizing that you will also experience what it's like to grow up in the era where we grew up so that you could have an appreciation of where
Okay.
we come from.
Okay. But
And
you gave us a lot to unpack. Now,
yeah.
the reality you mentioned today, despite changing political leadership,
Mhm.
elaborate a little more on that. What is this reality? Because this show is reality with partiality. So get into it. Let's chop it up. What is this reality?
Percy, what
Despite
is
changing
different? What
political
is
leadership.
different? If you walk through the Eden Site Alley area right now and you walk through Majestic Alley, what is significantly different within that space that you would say was the reality 40 years ago?
Mm.
What is significantly different?
Ivan, you're 60 years old. Answer that.
Well, I don't think much have changed, except that you might have a few better streets and so on. But these things that that are affecting us. As a matter of fact, they're becoming more predominant. Crime and violence and gangs and all those things. And that is one of the areas.
Stop right there. Stop right there. Bryton, you are this change agent. You can change it. Come on, man. Come on. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I would say my contributions, Percy, has not necessarily gotten to that point where I could say I am the change agent.
Okay.
What I will say is that I find ways to help community, and I don't necessarily always discuss like things that I do for my community and how I give back.
Yes.
But where I can, I give back to community. What I will say is that this community in particular is a community that is a stronghold of the People's United Party.
I was a little unfair to you. What I meant to unearth is that you're dissatisfied. You're not happy with the status quo. And
absolutely not.
Yeah, and we are yearning and searching, to do something about this. And I like that. I like that. You're not claiming, you're not coming. Well, we are dissatisfied. Co-host, you agree that? Do you share that sentiment?
I share that sentiment also, but Bryton also mentioned that the system that we are using to get votes, the political aspect of it, really has not changed. And I think until we do the right thing in terms of creating that environment for people rather than using people for.
Stick up in. Let Bryton react to that. The system. Can we change the system? Can we tweak it?
It can be changed. It can be changed, but the powers that be don't want to change it. Because when you keep a people closed off from opportunities such as education opportunities, and you're not educating your populace, it's easy to control. It is easy to have people fall in line. And this is a continuation of the coloniality that exists within Belize. It stems prior to 1981. Okay, it's really historically rooted in the asymmetry of power that exists between those in leadership and those who put leadership, but also the exposure that people have to thinking critically about what these people can and cannot do systematically.
All right. I will ask you to hold at that. Yeah, but I agree. The trappings of colonialism still plague. Grace Primary, EPF, SJCJC, then Galen University. Do you know of one Dr. Sylvia Catus?
Yes, Dr. Catus. Very jovial spirit. Wonderful person, and I'm so sorry to hear of the tragic news that came out last week with Dr. Silva Catus, man. It's really a loss for Belize's higher education system and for national development, because she has really shaped a lot of the thinking of our young Belizeans coming out of university.
Co-host?
Certainly, I knew Ms. Catus very well, and she has made her contribution in many respects, which I appreciate, and that is something that I really like to see, when we are not selfish, but we also try our best to create that environment which is necessary for all of us, not competing against each other, but to make spaces that what is good for Somalis is also good for us. And she was one of those persons. So I really appreciate the service that she gave, particularly in the education field.
Sylvia is my neighbor around the corner here in Buttonwood. When Aikman started UB after independence, that young upstart who beat George Price there made big stack or Fitong, and then they carve out the man head pick stack for price and did it. God bless the dead, the Kayak man gone, but Sylvia, she came from the US fresh, beautiful. And she started teaching at UB before it, UCB it was called, before it became UB. And they started there, you know, before they amalgamate all these schools, technical and nursing school and whatnot, teachers college, you know, it started there, teachers college and the like. UB started there. Hello, now. So that may be where your mom and I don't know, I don't recall, but that's for another show. But our sympathies go out to all. Are we agreed that our sympathies go out to the family, friends, and students, past students, associates of Galen and Dr. Katus and UB? She was there for many years. Okay, so we agree. Okay,
certainly.
Okay, now back at you, Bryton. We'll have a show. Maybe we can have a show about Dr. Katus, but back at you now. President at Galen, Student Union President, right?
I was president of Galen University's student government.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And you said at the end, that the latter part of your term there, right?
At the latter part of my term there at Galen, my last semester actually, I sat down with the president from UB and we began initial discussions to what would have become the National Student Union of Belize.
Okay. Oh, National Student Union. You were on the way to forming one of those.
And I was on my way out from university at the time, so I passed the baton on to someone else.
Yeah, and we wanted to pass on, you know, after this show, send them to the show. Because we don't discriminate, send them to the show. So then now, sports with Matthew Smiling, volleyball, 20 something there. Say a little bit more on that.
Well, Matthew Smiling was the first coach that I had in terms of exploring my athletic abilities. I started off with basketball. I never wanted to play any sports, to be honest with you. In second form, I was just the kid who was attending school, third form. In that one summer, I grew from 5'3" to 6'3", and I went back to school being just a long, lanky kid. And my dad was like, "You need to go play some sports." So he knew that Matthew Smiling was running basketball camp, and Matthew Smiling said, "Come, bring on, make we see what happened." And I went there, and I felt awkward. I was not very much impassioned by basketball. But I started to develop my physical ability, and I will say that really he pushed. He was very disciplined with his program. Him and Fred Gabriel, who passed away a few years ago. If you know Mr. Fred, you know that you're not called for waste time and you're not called for ramp. You're coming there because it's about discipline, it's about structure, and about becoming your best self. And that's where I actually met Minister Devin Daly. We used to play basketball together with Matthew Smiling, Mr. Fred Gabriel, and Fred Garcia at the Civic Center before it was broken down. But essentially, that shaped a huge part of my athletic career because it made me easily transition from basketball to volleyball.
No. First travel to Panama. Under what? Under 19, under what?
The under 19 volleyball national team.
Give us a little more on that, slightly.
That was my first time traveling with the team. I was fresh. There were guys who were playing long before I started playing volleyball. But it was an experience for me because it made me recognize that the other countries were really taking sports seriously. We had to do a lot of work. Um, it made me lock into something that I wanted to get better at. Um,
Okay.
and so when I came back from Panama, I realized that there were a lot of things that I needed to work on, and I started to grind in the gym. I started to spend
Ah,
hours after practice. I started to work out outside of practice, putting in that gym work on my own time to be able to just
yes,
get to another
yes,
level.
but see, but there must have been a point when Brighton decided I'm all in. Do you remember a point when you decided I'm all in?
That would have happened back from Matthew Smiling days.
Okay, okay,
Because I
okay.
first traveled with Matthew Smiling in tournaments to Cancun. And then we also went to Costa Rica, and that was when I had my first taste of victory. We came in second um, in the central basket in Costa Rica. And
Mhm.
then we would have traveled to Mexico City, where we would have played against all these other teams, and we came in fourth in that tournament.
Okay, now played for 15 years with the Belize national team. I hope I get it right.
Mhm.
Elaborate a little more on that.
So my volleyball career has. So last year I essentially retired. I say retire because I expressed publicly that I'm stepping away from the sport. Um, Particularly because I started this academic journey, which would be for the next 4 years minimum. Um,
Okay.
so I'm not actively training volleyball. I'm not actively engaged in playing. Um, but for the past 15 years, I have played, I have coached, um, I have coached in the US as well, um, at the NCAA level. Um, I have also done coaching locally in Belize and for Belize's national team at the junior levels. Um, so beyond just being an athlete in these past 15 years, I've already started to tap into the long-term athlete development um, part of being an athlete. I started to
Okay.
dabble in coaching and really
Yeah.
trying to convey what it
Yeah,
takes to
but
become a
at a
great
point
athlete.
2021, you became Belize's first pro volleyball player.
In 2021. Yeah.
Tell
And that
us,
was
tell
just
us.
that was a leap of faith, really.
Huh?
After playing for so many years, and going to Canada, because I actually went to Canada as well, and I didn't say this when I was presenting earlier, but I went to Canada for 2 years to
Hmm.
do my master's in leadership and management, and
Hmm.
I had
Okay, you did your master's in Canada.
yes, but I didn't finish my master's degree because I came back home from COVID. This is
Okay,
a
okay,
long
okay.
story. When
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
COVID pandemic hit, everyone
Okay.
from Canada was sent back home, and then we had to go into quarantine, and it was like a whole year and a half that had gone past. My program
Whoopa.
was not hybrid, so I couldn't finish my program online. Belize is very.
Stick a pin, stick a pin. Did COVID take some years off of you, co-host?
Pardon? Yeah, certainly. COVID is a very important. That event meant created a lot of havoc
Yeah.
in all areas, and we had to be very careful. So, um, I don't think it took any years away from me. I was able to survive it, and I'm feeling very well. So,
Well,
but I
it took
know it has
from
been a
me,
very
it took
setback.
from me because into my retirement years, we were like almost under curfew, shop closed, borders were closed. Um, eh, man, economy, worldwide. Anyway,
But it's a good. The good thing is that we survive because that's something that we can't control. So
you are
from that
trying to
point of
get
view,
something good out of it. You are trying, you are squeezing to get something good out of it. But Brighton, okay, so those COVID years affected your study in Canada. Continue.
Yeah, they really did. When I got back to Belize, I had to go into quarantine for about 2 weeks. And thereafter, the lockdown had started. Our country's borders were locked down. I couldn't get back out of the country to get to a embassy for Canada in Mexico to renew my visa that had expired to.
Yeah, but jump to the Finland thing, man.
Yeah, so this was actually right before Finland, and this was what made me pivot into that professional career.
Uh-huh.
I continued playing volleyball when I came back, and I went to Finland, and I went to Finland at the end of the COVID pandemic when everything was about to die down. So this was in 2021, middle 2021, going on 2022. Never had COVID the entire time the pandemic was going on until I got to Finland. We were middle of the season, and I ended up getting COVID and had to go in quarantine. But But good thing is that in Finland they have such an advanced health system. And where I stayed in Finland was very forested. So they told me if you need to get up and go outside to go walk the trails and what's not, you could go and do that.
Yes, but you reach stardom. You reach stardom. You put Belize on the map. That was a high. International high.
It was. And you know, it was just the beginning. It was just the beginning. I could have still been playing professional volleyball at this moment had I not gotten injured. And this is the vulnerability of being an athlete. Because I had other contracts coming up to play in Denmark.
Fine. If we are looking at that trajectory of sports, yes. But Brighton, you never stopped growing. So that was a juncture, right? In the sport, your sport life. Because we're really talking, to my mind, about your existential reality. Your 3 score and 10, but in your family they live long. So you won't get, you going past that. Plenty past. So we are talking about, you will only become full-fledged when you are dead, which is way like you got. So you reach one peak there. And a peak that very few people reach. I mean, how many people in Belize can say, either on international stage, we post a thing there. The man not got no top, He got the Belize flag, the paper. No upstairs. The man loan riblets, like scoreboard. He was in top shape. My co-host, hello.
Yes. I
Top shape. Tell us about the discipline of an athlete. What your diet? Tell us a little.
Well,
package it for way, Brighton. Package it for way about.
Before Brighton, before you get there, I want to say that you're a very good example, and a lot of young people, you're inspiration. I would see, and if they would only follow along those paths, because sometimes it's not only just about academia. You'll have to find what you're good at, what you're calling, what your niche is, and a lot of Belizeans can learn from your experience. So yeah, go ahead, like my as Percy said, go ahead.
Well, just to pivot from that, I think there are a lot of Belizeans who are now recognizing that the possibility is very much there. We have young Ernest Brasta, who is playing in Brazil professionally right now.
Send off away. Send off on the show. Go ahead.
We have Francis Haas, who is doing coaching and also playing here in the US as well.
Send on to the show. Go ahead.
And those guys, they have very, very interesting stories and stories that are by far more interesting than mine.
Yeah, but wait, stop. No. I won't let you get away. The resilience. No, I'm serious. Look, I managed the scholarship desk at Foreign Affairs for years. And they used to say, hide, and maybe it was true that government used to hide the scholarship them. So we do this email, we take all the email addresses and we send it to everybody. And yeah, hundreds and hundreds benefit. They get the scholarship opportunities in real time remotely. And all over the world and go, capitalize. And your older brother, you mentioned his name, Berisford Jr, right? He's junior.
Yeah.
He I know him from there. And then quickly the man come back and the man, a big man. And he work as one big man now. And since then he catapult and get bigger. So, but I'm saying, some of them came. I don't mind if they do these students, but the only criteria was you have to hungry. So some of them came and wanted me to do their homework. I don't give any package. They want to do their homework. I said, please leave my office. Leave my office. No, because the government only have a basket of scholarships for the whole country. And you have people who default on them. They may holler for them. My dog that I have to compare him. Anyway, more on that another time. But resilience is the point, Bryton. Is uncommon.
Two things, Percy, that I want to talk about that you're saying right now. Not to cut you off, but you mentioned about scholarships, and I'm very, very big on scholarships because that's what my foundation has been doing for the past couple of years since 2018 when we established, was finding scholarships for Belizeans. It would have been about 3 years ago when we established a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education to be able to supply scholarships to cover a small percentage for travels for athletes who would be leaving Belize to pursue academic opportunities. But one of the reasons why I established this foundation and created this scholarship opportunity pathway for our athletes is because we do not prioritize in Belize the development of our athletes the way that we ought to. There is a gap in terms of the urgency and prioritization that athletic development can have for national development. And until and unless politicians recognize the urgency in what sports can do for national development, we will continue to propose budgets and put forward budgets in the House of Representatives yearly budget meeting that underestimates the power that exists from prioritizing sports as a national development tool. And we see it with both political parties.
If I could stick up in there, because we do not, like I said, and I keep saying this, create the environment, because we know once you're a professional, you're not a person as easy for a politician to convince. And so it goes right back to the mindset and that colonial state, which we need to get out of and do what is right, what is the best for the population. But go ahead.
Because it taps something there. You have to appropriate for it, man. It can't just be esoteric. I support you, donation. You have to put financing. You have to build a structure. You have to prioritize it. It's not what Jamaica did, Bryton. They prioritize it.
Jamaica found what was their niche.
Jamaica, they have world-class athletes because they put a structure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
One of the things that really has been debilitating to Belize's development in sports is the fact that it's so fragmented.
Go ahead.
The national federations work almost in isolation of the National Sports Council. The National Sports Council is not doing much to revise its policies in a timely fashion. And essentially, it's not being provided with the funding to be able to run management properly. But that is not an excuse. That is not an excuse. Because my brother and I, we run our foundation and we don't have any money. You have to know how to be ingenious and innovative when you don't have
no, the man right. No, you're right, Bryton, because Crazy Glue with the vision is that where that road name that road
Coastal Highway.
Coastal Highway. Without money, without budget, he just use the ingenuity. He can and talk to the landowners them, and next you know where the road name say?
Coastal Highway. Coastal Highway.
Yeah, without a budget, no, the man answer something. But notwithstanding, the ministries that they compete for $1, man. The government only got $1 for spend, and every, they bring all of that dog in the government door. So Ministry of Education don't
what do we expect if we are not diversifying our economy? What do we expect if we are not investing in people, if we're not investing in really expanding the economy for people to be able to grow? Economic growth, as much as the current, and I say this all the time, the current government has, through the blue bonds, essentially created fiscal space. But economic growth does not equate to economic development. You have to be able to invest back in people for you to see the returns. One of the things I'm saying is that we have not really found a way how to really diversify our economy and to be able to capital to be able to invest in these other areas.
Yeah, we're going into it after, but for right now, 2021-22, Young Leaders Alliance, People's Constitution Commission, advocate on behalf of young people. Go.
Young Leaders Alliance came from Youth Votes Matter. We were just a group of young people, a consortium of young people who came together and wanted to essentially hear what politicians and aspiring politicians had to offer to Belize's development. And so we started our series. We ended up partnering with, I believe it was TNC at the time, and then we pivoted and then we partnered with Love FM. And so we ended up having a lot of the people who became CEOs and who became ministers. We interviewed them and we really picked their brains from the perspective of young people and what our concerns were at that point in time. And we started to expand out. We have over 500 plus members that's a part of YLab.
I saw you like a journalist there. Was that part of, is that part of your resume?
I also did Open Your Eyes talk show, as well as I did a bit of news anchoring when Marlene was transitioning to her post as CEO. Prior to me going to Finland, and after I came back from Finland, I continued a bit as well before starting my duties as a policy analyst within sustainable development. But certainly, I have always been someone who loved public speaking and delivering speeches, debates, engaging in conversation. And so that came naturally to me.
Okay. Yes, very good. I'm glad you because, yeah, that's important. Your microphone. Then you and your brother, BK Sports. BK, you know?
BK Sports, yeah. So BK Sports was essentially us sitting down back in 2017. We sat down with then Mr. Mark Usher, and we were discussing what are some ways we could expand opportunities for Belizean athletes, and we thought about all different ways how sports could be restructured. Fast forward, Beres and I sat down in what he called his man cave, which is just a room with a whiteboard and two chairs and a table, and we sat down and we drafted out what BK sports would look like, how we could contribute to
All right.
national.
More of, yeah, we will, yep. But you from 1981, we have a constitution. Well, that was September our independence. We will make 45 years come September here. Constitution gave equal rights, with which come equal opportunity. Today, there's, and under that same area in the Constitution, they talk about no discrimination, right? So equal right, no discrimination, irrespective of color, creed, gender, etc. Equal rights. Talk to me about equal rights. Grounded in the Constitution, which is the supreme law of our land. Talk to me about that. Talk to us about that.
So perhaps one of the things I could have shared as well was the fact that I was one of the persons who challenged the constitutionality of police stop and search in Belize, which became a critical case that set precedents for how police officers operate with people on a day-to-day basis. In fact, that judgment is also utilized by attorneys today to explain where there are constitutional violations in relation to the current statement of emergency that's present in Belize. Because it essentially blankets over an entire community of people without really looking at the intelligence to make decisions. So when you talk about the constitutionality and equality, the PCC would have been the perfect opportunity to really iron out a lot of those issues that we see present in terms of the imbalance of constitutional rights that the equal rights that exist. Now, in terms of the approach that was taken for the PCC, looking back retrospectively, I think it could have been done differently. It could have been done differently because we live in a community that is still very much etched in the symbolic, in the symbolism really of conservative society. The Constitution essentially continues to uphold asymmetries of power. And I say that because you look at who power is given to within the remit of the Constitution, but you also look at who are excluded from equal rights.
Yeah, we get it, man. We get it, man. Sunny Rang somewhere with how it impact on the ground. We get that. So we get that. Now, your BK Foundation and your Star Power, networking with Canada, I don't know, UK, I don't know if you said US coaches. Tell us more.
Like I said earlier, you don't need money to make things happen all the time. Money is important. You need brains. You need ideas. You need to think, have the ability to think critically and to be able to utilize networks that you have. That is why no politician can come to me and tell me, I have no money for if you're in power and you're in a position of power, you should know how to be able to create networks that will connect people with opportunities, regardless if you have financing or not.
Yes, so stick up in because my co-host his mouth is watering. Co-host?
No. I agree certainly what Brighton is saying. The only thing is, we have this ultimate challenge of how do you change people, right? Because a lot of people are used to certain things, and even if you find the resources and you help them, there's no guarantee that you will get
Yes.
their vote, because at the end
Yes.
of the day, it seemed to me that on election day, that who got the money will win.
Yes.
So how do we change that appetite?
No,
That
we're not getting to that, man. No. They
no,
ask no question at the end of your thing, man. No.
no,
You know,
okay. No, but I'm
mangrove
saying
cutting
I'm
in
saying
Belama.
yes. That I'm saying yes. That once you are aspiring, you should have networks and so on. And how do you get these
You are
things?
right.
You know?
You are
And
right.
that's
You
all
are
I was
right.
saying. And so I agree with him that yes,
Yes.
you got to be innovative. You have to be able to think through, and you have to be able to, in most cases, uh, relate with people, and try to even instill with them that they have an important part to play.
Yeah. What
Mhm.
is catching me here now is that we have so much to unpack.
Yeah.
So we will give you tomorrow, co-host, for your presentation, the whole period. But
Certainly.
today, Brighton came loaded.
Brighton actually touched on one of the key things that I will present: diversification of the economy,
He,
because that's a
yeah.
very important thing that we are lacking since independence. We have not been able to grow the economy. So I
Well,
like that.
well,
Yeah.
yes, but he, what I
We
find
talk
amazing,
about that
what I
tomorrow.
find amazing is how much he has a handle on the big picture. He's
So
a big picture guy. So
he is he is the epitome of what a person who is making the best version of himself. It's just that it's a long life
out is the
process.
edge. That is the point.
Yes.
That you know how long it takes some people to get to his level.
I
Sometimes
agree.
never.
And so I want to,
Sometimes
I want
never.
to congratulate you. You've had a lot of exposure, and you're doing a lot of things,
I
and
won't. I will say mine. I won't congratulate him
you know
yet
where you're
because
going. You know where
he
you're going.
he has a he has heavy big top side, heavy, limitless. They say sky is limit. No, he has no limit. No, back to mangrove cutting in Belama and being against that. Brighton.
In 2016 or 2015, thereabout,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a letter to Dr. Carla Barnett, and she's Secretary General right now of CARICOM. And she put a stop order for the cutting of the mangroves that had started in the area where I lived. Fast forward, that cutting was resumed after 2020, and let's just say that everything that had been stopped was allowed, and
Mm-hmm.
in my response to revolting and to essentially speaking against that, I called the media. I worked with the media at the time, so I utilized my network
Yeah,
that I had. Um,
that
I
is part of
exposed
your
it for what
advocacy.
it is because I believe in documenting history.
Uh-huh.
Even if you cannot fully stop something from happening, it's important to document history. And so that was my goal in really and truly getting the media involved in documenting what was happening. But in
Yeah.
response to that,
Uh-huh.
I took back power as well. And I took back power because I brought together my entire community, particularly the young people around my block. Um, and we partnered with Jamal Galvez, Manatiman,
Okay.
and we essentially planted back mangroves along the entire watershed of the canal that would run into the Belama area
Ah,
where we were. And if you
ah.
go there now, the trees are so big, I don't even think anybody wants to cut it down now.
If your
Um,
dad is listening, and he's over there, when the show done, I go in there in a militia pants and Yes, I want him to elaborate for me and point things out to me. No, work with, I don't know if it was a permanent mission at Belize, headquartered in New York, and in particular SIDS.
Yeah.
People don't know what the acronym mean, man. Hello, go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially, this is one of Belize's diplomatic spaces in New York, and they work particularly with the United Nations. And so I was there for about a year through the Alliance of Small Island States, which is the representative body that negotiates for small islands and low-lying states like Belize, Barbados, Jamaica, countries from the Pacific, as well as from the Atlantic, Indian, and Mediterranean Sea. So it's
We
about
belong to it, but we belong to it, but with a mainland, right?
we belong to it. Characteristically, we fall into the scope of what constitutes small island developing states because of our climate vulnerability, our debt profile, as well as our low-lying status as a mainland. So we do
But the acronym small island is sometimes misleading, because a lot of times
Misleading to
we
those
have to
who
tell people, because when studying abroad, especially in the Caribbean, they say, "Oh, you're from a small island, and we are not an island." So
yeah, one of the
but
things
we share the same characteristics and commonalities, so I can understand the concept. But it's something
yes.
that if we could change that small island idea, to add something to it, that would be fine. But it's just an acronym.
yes, it is.
But the acronym has very, very significant meaning, and if you change that acronym, then you lose out on things that have been negotiated and been etched in policy in the international framework. So if you change that, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Okay.
So the acronym really and truly, because I've had this discussion with my professor right now, who is a specialist.
Fine. I get you. I get
Fine.
you. In the negotiating arena,
Mhm.
notwithstanding, a small island can disappear with disaster. An island, but not a mainland. A
Well,
small island.
our
Main-
mainland could actually become inundated with flood, as we've been seeing in Monkey River. The reality is we have the opportunity to move a little bit more inland.
There you go.
Countries like Barbados
There
will
you
be
go.
completely inundated. But not to say that we're below sea level. So we have
Yeah,
to be
part
very
of it,
careful with
yes.
how we're going forward in terms of development planning of urban
But
infrastructure.
we have the option to relocate. A mainland has the option to relocate given a disaster. Like after Hurricane Hattie 61, right, whatever, right? We moved to higher ground, and Hattieville and so established, and now they had the capital that Belompan is Belize City. So yes, we get
Well,
you.
I'm glad you said that, Percy, because my advisor and I will be in Belize in July because of this very same discussion that you brought up with moving our capital from Belize City to Belmopan as a result of the climate catastrophe of Hattie. So,
Well, let's get into that. Let us hear you get game. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let us talk about your fellowship.
yeah, so the fellowship really provided young professionals the opportunity to learn more about the international system, to learn how small island developing states, inclusive of the mainland lowlands, negotiate and get outcomes to be able to support our development and push back against the climate crisis. So the fellowship was a 1 year thing, but it really exposed our young people to understand what negotiation looks like at the international level and how that translates back to national policies and national development. For me, I had the opportunity to work directly with one of Belize's lead negotiators in climate finance, and Ambassador Janine Felsen, who is the sister of
That's my colleague. Janine.
former Minister Christopher Koye.
Yeah.
and very, very brilliant woman.
Yes. She's been in the
Very
system a
stoic,
while.
very stoic, and a
Yes.
very critical thinker, and I learned a lot from her in terms of the way how Belize approaches negotiations within the climate finance space. And it
Yeah.
actually propelled me to want to further study um, that particular that particular area of work. And that's what my dissertation really is trajectorying towards, because I really want to now historicize Belize's political context in the midst of all of this. How we're
Yeah.
here now.
Yeah, but we have to wrap, but why this a Janine? One young girl, young girl. Well, when I said that, no, a woman, a full grown, but in the picture with her is the late Fred Martinez, who was our ambassador transcending red and blue governments in Guatemala for years. A younger Assad Schumann and a black-haired farmer, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now he's doing a lot of things. Iman Courtney. So Miss Felsen, she may be younger, not so much now, but look, she's been around. No,
Experience, yeah.
you're go ahead, please go ahead.
No, I was just saying that it's always a privilege to be able to work with someone like her, because she really pushes you to think.
She's one of your advisors.
She's actually going to be my advisor, because I'm going to be doing experiential learning for my dissertation, for my PhD program this month and next month with the mission. Actually, I start tomorrow. But she's very structured, and she's a very good mentor,
Yes.
in having me understand the ins and outs of the international system, and learning the ropes really of international negotiations and what that entails.
So your thesis, is it set?
Then after the first year, no, it's not set in stone, but it's essentially I have a big picture of what I want to focus on. I have my qualifying exams coming up next year. So I have this next year to really fine tune what the research question looks like. But I did my initial presentation to my entire department about a month ago, not even a month, maybe about 2 weeks ago, and they're very much happy with the progress that I've made over the past year. My advisor has been really pushing me. She's very structured. She's from Jamaica, but she's a professor here at the university, and she's very, very structured. One of perhaps the most published author around small island developing states academic work. And she's really been pushing me to really up my level of analytical thinking, and breaking down complex situations to make it palpable for common people to understand. So it's not set. The PhD process is an ever moving until you really and truly say, okay, this is where I have to stop and focus, and perhaps pursue further studies in a post-grad
Yeah,
setting.
if you have a few minutes, when we're done with the show, we'll still be on, talking on the phone
Yeah.
in the studio. Ivan, go
Yes,
ahead.
my brother.
I know I feel badly because we had so much to unpack. I didn't give you enough time to make your interventions.
No, man, no. I certainly like to hear from the host itself, from Brighton, because really and truly that's what we should do, to try and set examples, or people relating their life journey, and try to get other people to understand that it is what you make of it. And once you know what you want, and you can identify where your strengths and weaknesses are, and so on. You're on your road to become the best version of yourself. So
And that
I don't like to interrupt as much. I like to hear from personal experiences.
well, that's the point here. And I don't have anything to add. But Brighton, you have to now nail it for us. The audience is listening. Go.
I think what I want to be the takeaway message from this conversation is that um, never see yourself as not being able to accomplish your wildest, biggest dreams. Um, your ability to dream, grow, and thrive is inherently tied to how you see yourself in society. It's not about what people think of you and what you can do. It's about what you think about yourself and what you can contribute. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your background is. You have dignity. Um, if you have self-respect, if you respect other people, and if you really and truly work hard towards your goals and your dreams, you could break the ceiling. And I do think that when you are blessed, you're supposed to be a blessing to other people. Um, because really that's how we should be living. We should be living
Come right there.
harmoniously.
Come right
Yeah.
there. I'm sorry to. You're a spiritual minded.
I would say I'm spiritual minded. Yes, absolutely. That's how I've been raised. Um, I'm Anglican. My mom is Catholic. I'm not going to say that I'm essentially religious, but I am very much spiritual in terms of having a relationship with God, and I do live by the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, selflessness, self control. Those things really and truly guide my everyday thinking and approach to really dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, and how I carry myself in the world. It's essentially inherent to who I am. It's the way I've been raised. Those are the qualities and characteristics that I've been raised by, and that's what I try to give back to the world. So I wouldn't say I'm essentially religious. I don't go to church on Sundays every Sunday like some people, or even Wednesdays. Um, but I do have deep faith, and I do have um, a deep sense of knowing who I am and my relationship with the Creator. And
Spirituality.
right, and that is essentially God is my guide,
Okay.
and that's what I believe.
Yeah. It's been our pleasure having you, Brighton. You know, tell us about your journey, the past, present, future, you know, your
Yeah.
vision going forward.
So
And yes, go ahead.
so
Sorry, you
my
were
past
saying?
is essentially what I shared. It's been an opportunity to experience the realities of life at a very young age. Present is about really refining who I want to become. It's about essentially putting myself in a space where I could self actualize and become the best version of myself. At this present moment, I'm working on that academically. Um, and my future is essentially how I can give back to community. And whether that's at the international level or at the local level, um, there will certainly be um, people at the center of that. People has always been at the center of who I am and what I do, because I do believe that our purpose is to be able to leave this place better than we found it. And essentially, we should be working towards um, our purpose. And if that's my purpose, then I need to be able to ensure that when I leave this place, I would have contributed in alignment with that purpose. So,
well, the most important step is the one in front of you. Because if you plan, a plan is like a finish line. It's not a starting place. And you have very rich life experience from your upbringing years, when your parents would take you through the Majestic Alley and let you spend some time with the grandparents. And your journey continues.
yeah.
So, with rich life experiences, making memories, wherein you will find your niche. It is a good scary for me because there is no limit. A human being has no ceiling. Only you can determine that. Because as long as you live and your mental acuity remains intact, you will only become full-fledged whenever you are dead. So here's hoping through life experience and making memories, you find your niche, which you will not find in a book. You will not find from a scholar. You, Bryton, is the one that will determine that for yourself. All the best. Let's discuss further off air.